Maison A, Bâle, gare Terminus.
If I showed my face, I could get in trouble, because I don't know how far my airline is involved in this phenomenon. Officially, there is no duty to maintain secrecy, but we have actually something like a code saying that you don't talk about the things you see during a flight. It was on a summer morning in Scandinavia. We started with the nicest weather towards South Europe and back. The sky over Scandinavia was absolutely blue. And after takeoff towards west, we could see a big grid over the sea. And this grid was definitely not of natural origin. The wind direction was chosen the way that this grid would automatically, I suppose within 2 or 3 hours, have reached the town where we took off. And around this grid, everything was blue. It even attracted my colleague's attention, who asked himself, "What's that?" but then said, "Well, maybe some military experiments."
Because someone has a patent, we're going to go out and ask someone to spend thousands, maybe millions of dollars on an aircraft program to go search for aluminum. No, it just doesn't make any sense. I've interacted with chemtrail believers since about 1999, and I believe this coincided with an experiment we had in 1996 called Success. One of the things we were looking for was to fly through contrails to study the ice crystals formed in the contrails and see how they change with time as the contrail grows. We realized then that, yeah, there's a lot of spreading going on from these contrails. We weren't spraying anything. We were just flying these aircraft to do a study. And for this experiment that I mentioned, the oval contrail, that was... the plane went back and sampled its own contrail. You know, just ice crystals. It's not anything, and they found it just like cirrus clouds. So it was not a thing. It just so happened that the next year, this chemtrail phenomenon just went ballistic.
Maybe it went ballistic, because the researchers in this project indeed found higher concentrations of aluminum in the contrails and in aircraft exhaust. As early as 1994, scientists frequently detected barium, aluminum, carbon, and titanium in the vicinity of cirrus clouds over Colorado and Wyoming. They suggested that these elements were related to air transport sources. I asked myself, why were they looking for aluminum and barium back then, but not anymore since then? It is obviously not that absurd for these substances to be found at such heights. Sauberer Himmel, a German organization of chemtrail activists, conducted 74 rainwater tests all over Germany. 43 of the samples contained aluminum. 54 of the samples contained barium.
For me, as a scientist, it is important to measure, and the only measurement that is relevant for me is the assessment of human beings. How can we show that all of us are being poisoned by aluminum and are being poisoned every day? So we experience difficulties, first in the USA. Many laboratories received letters from the FDA telling them not to test for aluminum anymore. This was already an indication. It happened 3 to 4 years ago. And then the aluminum which we breathe in is nano-sized, which means that these are tiny particles which cannot be measured with ordinary laboratory methods. And therefore, we didn't realize the severity for a long time. Because of the limited laboratory methods, it didn't show up in hair analyses or in blood or serum analyses until we came across a new method called apheresis. Apheresis is a blood cleaning method whereby all the blood is led through a filter system, and all pollutants in the blood are filtered out. And when nano-sized particles get close to the filter, they contract and form lumps and can then be shown with ordinary measurement methods. Well, what we have found, we have sent over 200 patients overseas from the US, is that the aluminum content, namely the total physical stress from aluminum, is 100 times larger than from all other metals.
Das mehr als das 100-fache höher ist als das von allen anderen Metallen.
My first real stop for the film was in Mount Shasta, and Mount Shasta is in Northern California, and it's far removed from any industry, so literally there should be very little metal. Although aluminum is very abundant in the earth, it is not supposed to be an element in free form. So what they had found, for instance, Mount Shasta, which normally should have about 7 parts per billion of aluminum, they found 61,100 parts per billion aluminum. And that's thousands of times higher than normal amounts.
It's no proof that the aluminum comes from this jet. Chemtrails. What can you say about that?
Well, you know, I beg to differ. I believe that it does prove. If there's a helicopter 30 feet above your house and they're dumping something out that's falling on your house, and you test that substance and you find out that it's very toxic, I mean, how could somebody deny really what's going on? So, yeah. And if it didn't come from the aerosol spraying, where did it come from? So far, nobody has been able to prove that they've come from anywhere else.
Well, what it looked like was just like cotton candy.
It's quite, it goes quite hard, if that makes sense. And if you listen to it, it rips. It's got a Velcro sort of a sound to it.
They come in nanoparticles, and those particles make up what they call an array, meaning they go in a straight line, and they connect.
La Côte d'Azur, sun, beach, and holidays. But not for me. I followed up on a phone call from a French-Italian activist.
I think it is the duty of the authorities to give us answers, because we are doing the job that should be done by the authorities. We have the common people paying for analyses, while the authorities should be doing it, and should be giving us answers. So far we have analyses from the rain, from the soil, but how to make the link to the plains? Therefore, what Bernhard gives us is exceptional. My name is Bernhard Tellies. I'm now a 70-year-old man, and I'm specialized in inorganic chemistry. In 1991, I created this company called Analytica with the hope of doing something for the protection of our environment. At the end of last year, in 2012, I received a call from a lady by the name of Evelyn Dumas, who lives in the center of France. And she told me an incredible story of filaments falling from the sky. I was a little surprised and doubtful, but I said yes. If you send me the filaments in sufficient quantity, I can try to analyze them. And the whole adventure began. This is one of the first filament samples from Miss Dumas in the center of France. This is from the northeast of France, from a certain Mrs. Duclaude, with whom Mrs. Dumas communicated over the internet. This here is from the Lumpkin family, from another corner of France. And this here is from Mrs. Laxonaire, not far from here on the coast. After a month, I realized that the problem is serious. 4 different people from 4 different corners of France talking about the same thing, and who send me samples which seem very similar. I analyzed these 4 samples. I wrote a report that was, in my opinion, very profound, substantial, and precise. I still have some samples, and I'm willing to share them with my peers. I discovered that all contained a category of compounds known as phthalates.
Today, 80% of all plasticizers used worldwide to produce PVC are phthalates. This big family of chemical compounds is divided into 3 major groups that differ in the length of the molecular chain, each with its own function. Phthalates with a very short molecular chain are typically used as solvents, whereas the others are used as plasticizers. Long phthalates are not harmful chemical substances and can be safely utilized. Short phthalates are classified as toxic to reproduction, and its reutilization is strictly controlled.
Phthalates do not dissolve. They fall from the sky on the ground, where they should not be. Not at all. You have to imagine whole of France is covered with these filaments, so it is not negligible at all. We now know what is inside. We have known about the issue of aluminum and barium occurrence for a long time. Here the inorganic chemistry shows that there are still other pollutants. There is a problem. There is a problem.
The actual work is much more serious than we'd like to admit, because it indicates that the general population is subject to this. There are a host of serious health issues that are implicated most directly with the research. And the research is indicating an exact match and correspondence between the nature of the physical materials I'm speaking of, in particular the filament material that I spoke of earlier, an exact match between that environmental type sample and samples which come from the human body as well as cultures. The agents that I'm seeing, unfortunately, have literally created a condition that is being classified as a new condition of ill health. The term is of Morgellons is used for it.
My name is Roswitha, and I live here at Lake Constance. And I have come down with Morgellons for 1.5 years. It starts with tingling and itching of the body, and after a while you can see that out of the fingers, for example, or out of other parts of the body, the fibers are coming out of the skin, plastic fibers. It's terrifying when you see that. You don't know what it's all about and how it works, and you feel totally sick. The doctors always say that it doesn't exist, that you're crazy, and discount it as a delusional parasitosis and send you to the psychiatrist. You stand there not knowing what to do. You get sicker and sicker. It gets worse, but no doctor is doing anything, is investigating, or is helping.
We have analyzed the fibers in the early phases, when it first becomes apparent and known in literature. They are protein fibers or substances. Earlier it was assumed that they were parasites, but we didn't find any DNA in them, a sign that it is something organic. There are different theories where they come from. The fallout from the chemtrails consists of plastic nanoparticles, which are coated with aluminum, titanium, and barium. We know this because we had it analyzed in a nanolab.
Wir haben es im Nanolabor untersuchen lassen.
Every environmental authority could spend their money on that and make the identical assessment for about 10,000 euros. We suppose that the inhaled plastic particles are the cause of the Morgellons disease. If we use our common sense, the link is totally clear between the chemtrails and the aluminum content in the air and the diseases, mainly of children. When babies are born, they do not have a blood-brain barrier, any protection. The inhaled aluminum ends up directly in the brain and is one of the main reasons for the whole neurological problems we see with kids. The number of children with neurological problems is rising exponentially in a clear correlation with the spraying in the sky.
My name is Clifford Carnicum, and I'm acting as an independent researcher in this work. I worked 15 years for the federal government in 3 different agencies in technical fields, including Department of Defense, field called Odyssey, which is gravitational modeling, and also work in computers, sole proprietorship. And for the last 15 years of my life, I basically am an independent researcher acting in the public interest. This is why I'm doing the work. It's at one level, it's no simpler than if you knew that you had pollution. If you want to take this on the simplest argument, of which there are much more deeper and complex arguments, but if you wanted to take it at the simplest level possible and ask yourself, is it all right for you to have the deliberate and systematic introduction of massive amounts of pollution into your atmosphere without your consent and without proper disclosure? Is that acceptable to you? Is that acceptable to your children?
John Brandt.
Good morning, Mr. Brandt. Wow, this is Amanda from Virginia.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I've been trying to get a hold of you for months now. You guys are covering up chemtrails.
No, we are not covering it. We have no reason to cover up chemtrails.
Of course, you have every reason to cover it up. Every reason. It's called losing your job.
What reasons would that be?
Oh, well, you personally, you would lose your job if you were to reveal anything to me, and it's probably unsafe for you to even be speaking about this, considering the types of individuals you work for.
It's not unsafe.
It is unsafe.
There's no problem with us talking on, you're a citizen, you're making a complaint.
Oh, Lord, have mercy on myself.
It's a complaint in an area that we don't have authority to regulate.
One of the main questions that we will face in dealing with this issue is whether or not there is full disclosure or not, whether or not it is intended that the public receives the information on this subject. And the facts are that the public is not to receive the information openly. If you have a covert operation, a cover for that operation will be provided. That's the nature of a covert operation. All of the evidence indicates that it is very much a covert operation of the greatest scale that has ever been exercised on this planet and really in the history of humanity as far as I know. Literally the atmosphere of the planet has been altered, and it's a deliberate alteration of the atmosphere. In the early years of my work, one of the things that I did was basically chronicle and document those parties that expressed an interest in my work. There is a paper on there, I believe the title is List of Visitors. It took place over a period of several months. It took place before certain security measures and firewalls have been put in place since then to basically protect that flow of information. There is a clear, documented interest at the highest level of government, congressional, on down, Pentagon, on down through all defense contractors, all health organizations, as well as media organizations, that they do and have demonstrated interest in the work, a rather serious interest in the work, it appears. The contradiction is that if any or all of these same entities are approached in a public fashion to address the issue, then there is no issue, is what we hear, and that everything is perfectly normal. And there is no interest, and there is no attention that needs to be devoted to the subject. If those that have been called upon to respond to the need for investigation and inquiry and relief fail in their duty and obligation, then we as citizens must assume that role to the best of our ability, because we are stewards of this planet. We don't own this planet. We must care for this planet.